Let's talk about March of the Machines, Best of the Worst. That's the top 3 cards from that set that are seeing play in 1% or less of decks since its release. Chandra Hope's Beacon is 4 and 2 red for a 5 loyalty legendary planeswalker Chandra. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, copy it. You may choose new targets for the copy. This ability triggers only once each turn. +2, add 2 mana in any combination of colors. +1, exile the top 5 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may cast an instant or sorcery spell from among those exiled cards. -X, Chandra Hope's Beacon deals X damage to each of up to 2 targets. I don't usually love Planeswalkers in the Commander format, but I think this one's got a little bit of spice that makes it worth playing in some decks. So if you're in an instant or sorcery spell specific deck, I think you may want to take a look at this. The static ability is incredibly powerful, and even if you don't think that you can protect it for the whole turn cycle and get access to it, you have a couple of backups. You can either do the +1 and just dig a little deeper for something to cast next turn. Very unideal. You don't really want to be doing that if you're planning on losing the card. However, you do have the alternative backup of the -X, where you can basically use this to kill 2 creatures, and that's a good way for Chandra to protect herself. You can also go face with this damage as well, so you could burn someone out for 5 or burn 2 people out for 5. I just think it's a really versatile card and definitely worth consideration for inclusion into your instant and sorcery spells matters decks. In the number 2 slot, we have Guardian of Ghirapur. For 2 and a white, we get a 3/3 creature angel with flying. Whenever Guardian of Ghirapur enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 other target creature or artifact you control. Return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. I think Guardian of Ghirapur got overlooked a little because it's slightly worse than a card we already have, Flickerwisp. But you don't usually care about flickering your opponent's things or things that your opponent stole from you to steal them back. That doesn't come up that often, so I don't think that it's a relevant reason not to run Guardian of Ghirapur. I think you should run it alongside the Flickerwisp in most cases. Having a creature that comes down and flickers one of your things, what it does for you is it lets you get more value out of your enters the battlefield doublers like a Panharmonicon or your Ghostways, which flickers your whole team and brings it back down. Then you get the additional enter the battlefield trigger to flicker another thing with the Guardian of Ghirapur. It's just a very powerful card, and I think it deserves a slot in way more decks than it's in. In the number 1 slot, we have Baral and Kari Zev. For 1 blue-red, we get a 2/4 legendary creature human with First Strike and Menace. Whenever you cast your first instant or sorcery spell each turn, you may cast a spell with lesser mana value that shares a card type with it from your hand without paying its mana cost. If you don't, create First Mate Ragavan, a legendary 2/1 red monkey pirate creature token. It gains haste until end of turn. Baral and Kari Zev do have a couple of problems that hold them back, but I don't think they're as big of issues as people believe. So the first one is that it's a creature in your spells deck, and yes it is, but it sort of solves a problem for you. And what I mean is it's a low cost creature with a big butt and first strike. So what it's going to do for you is protect your face in the early game. And quite often the way these decks lose is by not being able to protect yourself in the early game and getting aggroed out before you can set up your game plan. The other issue that this has is that it's possible to whiff on the spells. So like if you only have a single instant or only 1 sorcery, or you don't have enough mana for the more expensive one, then you can't get the spell copying side of it online. And I think that's not as big of a problem as people think, because the way that these decks operate, they're almost always drawing a lot of cards in the late game. So you're going to have that spell copying ability online because you're going to have access to so many of your cards. I think Baral and Kari Zev is an excellent role player in your instant and sorcery spells matters decks, and I think you should give it a shot. That's it for March of the Machine, Best of the Worst. These cards were actually quite powerful, and there were other cards that were powerful at 1% or less as well. So I think we're maybe just not seeing that much adoption overall on this whole set. What do you guys think of the cards that I picked out? Do you think that there were some other better options? Let me know.